The Boston Celtics have been navigating an offseason that feels less like a summer break and more like a chess match played under a ticking clock. Every move carries weight, every rumor gains traction, and every decision is scrutinized as the franchise seeks to balance its ambition with financial reality. The front office has been tasked with reducing costs without reducing expectations, a paradox that only the most strategic organizations can survive. Out of this pressure cooker emerged a scenario that is as surprising as it is logical. A potential trade that could change not only the financial balance sheet of the Celtics, but also the way the team approaches the upcoming season. The idea, highlighted by Dan Greenberg of Barstool Sports, involves Anfernee Simons moving to the Chicago Bulls. While Coby White and Jalen Smith land in Boston, on paper, it looks like a simple swap of talent and salaries, but the implications reach far deeper. What is at stake is not merely a reallocation of contracts, but a redefinition of how Boston might sustain its dominance while reshaping its roster for both immediate stability and future strength. Anfernee Simons is an explosive scorer, a guard, who can put points on the board in bursts that shift momentum in an instant. Yet his contract, valued at $27,680,000 for the season, represents a heavy anchor for a Celtics organization that has made salary reduction a central theme of the summer. By moving Simons and bringing in White and Smith, who together account for a combined $21,890,000, the Celtics would immediately save nearly $6 million. This is not a small number when viewed in the context of the luxury tax penalties looming over the team. It is a decision that echoes not just in the books of accountants, but in the flexibility it provides for potential reinforcements when the season reaches its decisive months. From the Chicago perspective, the trade holds equal intrigue. If the Bulls hesitate at the long-term cost of retaining White through an extension, they risk losing him for nothing when free agency arrives. Simons' contract, while larger, expires in a way that could clear even more financial space for Chicago by the next summer. It is a hedge against uncertainty, a way to avoid a painful choice while still keeping an explosive scorer in the fold. Greenberg captured the logic succinctly, pointing out that if the Bulls are not committed to White, why not secure a contract that ultimately provides them with greater breathing room when it matters most? For Boston, the deal is not about one simple path, but about creating options. There are two distinct roads the front office could travel depending on how the season unfolds. The first road focuses on immediate relief. Keep Smith as an insurance piece for the frontcourt, and move White at the deadline for either a trade, exception, or to a team operating under the tax line. This would allow Boston to trim salary further while still maintaining roster depth. The second road is more ambitious. Trade Smith for a non-taxpayer mid-level caliber player and extend White at a price that aligns with Boston's long-term vision. This road would emphasize continuity and player development while reinforcing the backcourt for years to come. Both paths converge on one key objective, allowing the Celtics to maneuver below the luxury tax threshold and avoid the escalating penalties that could strangle flexibility for seasons to come. Numbers matter, but what matters even more is the breathing room created for strategic additions down the line. The jewel of this proposed acquisition is not Smith, though he adds useful frontcourt depth, but White himself. Just 25 years old, White has emerged as a guard capable of scoring 20 points per game while distributing 4.5 assists. His shooting from long range, a respectable 37%, fits seamlessly into the space-oriented system of Joe Mazzulla. White brings not just shooting, but versatility, the ability to handle either guard position, generate his own shot, and guard multiple assignments defensively. He is the type of player whose prime aligns perfectly with the next championship window. Of the Celtics, with Jayson Tatum still entering his peak years, White's addition could provide balance, allowing Boston to attack opponents with a multi-dimensional backcourt that complements its established stars. What makes this scenario so compelling is not only the numbers or the fit, the possibilities that linger just beyond the surface. Boston is not simply exchanging contracts, it is exploring creative ways to remain dominant in an NBA landscape where the margin between contender and pretender is razor thin. Imagine a Celtics team that enters the playoffs, not only financially balanced but strategically deeper, capable of deploying lineups that opponents cannot easily solve. Imagine a guard rotation where White's scoring relieves pressure from the stars, forcing defenses to make impossible choices. The likelihood of the move remains uncertain, but the reasoning is undeniable. Boston gains flexibility without sacrificing ambition, while Chicago avoids a looming free agency dilemma and sets itself up for future cap space. Celtics fans, the proposal underscores a truth that has defined this offseason. The front office is not standing still. It is searching for pathways that keep the team competitive today while also safeguarding tomorrow. This is the essence of modern NBA strategy, where championships are built not only on talent, but on timing, financial engineering, and bold creativity. Celtics have already shown their willingness to cut costs aggressively this summer. The question lingers: will they take the next step and turn financial survival into competitive advantage? If they do, trades like this one will not just be about numbers on paper, but about positioning Boston to remain the standard of excellence in a league that never stops moving forward. No one expected the timeline to collapse this quickly, yet suddenly it did. An ownership change that was supposed to stretch until the end of this decade has been accelerated, and with it comes the type of power shift that always leaves a franchise standing at a crossroads. The Boston Celtics, valued at $6.1 billion, are no longer under the gradual guardianship of Wyc Grousbeck. Instead, Bill Chisum has already stepped into the seat of final authority, months and even years earlier than the original plan suggested. What does this mean? That is the question echoing through the basketball world tonight. Because whenever power changes hands this fast, something else is always moving beneath the surface. At first glance, the story sounds simple. A billionaire buys a franchise. He wants the title of governor, and he does not want to wait until the year 2028 to make decisions. But peel away the layers, and the implications grow far more intriguing. Why the rush? Why now? When the Celtics are at the peak of their global value, when the roster is simultaneously secure and fragile, when one miscalculation in the next 3 years could alter the destiny of this era. If Bill Chisum simply wanted control, he could have waited out the transition. The fact that he refused to do so suggests something larger, something hidden, something that could shape the future of Boston basketball in ways even fans who live and breathe this team have not yet imagined. Consider this: every great ownership transition in NBA history carries ripple effects that only become clear years later. When Jerry Buss took over the Lakers, few realized it would lead to Showtime. When Steve Ballmer seized the Clippers, no one knew it would transform them into a free agent magnet. Now, a similar window has opened in Boston, but the difference is that the Celtics already stand at the summit. What happens when a man with an encyclopedic knowledge of the franchise, who has waited his entire life for this seat, suddenly gets the keys to the empire, at least 3 years earlier than expected? Timing cannot be ignored. The summer has already reshaped the roster in subtle but significant ways. Veterans who anchored the locker room are gone, younger pieces are being elevated, and the weight of the franchise rests heavier than ever on the shoulders of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The next 3 seasons will decide not only whether this core becomes legendary, but whether the Celtics can build a dynasty in the modern salary cap era. Bill Chisum has not only bought into this challenge, he has demanded the authority to shape it directly. And that is why this news matters far more than a headline about paperwork. Skeptics may whisper comparisons to Mark Cuban's sale of the Mavericks, which ended with Dallas making seismic moves that Cuban himself had no voice in. But Boston is different, because Chisum is not entering as an outsider who sees basketball as a side investment. Sources close to the deal describe him as a lifelong Celtics fan with what they call an encyclopedic memory of the franchise's history. That is not the vocabulary of detachment. That is the vocabulary of obsession. The new governor is not a man dabbling in sports ownership. He is a man stepping into the role he has quietly prepared for his entire life. Still, questions swirl. Why did Wyc Grousbeck agree to surrender the governor role now, when the plan had been to hold it until 2028? Why did ESPN's coverage reveal subtle differences in wording compared to Chisum's earlier statements, where he spoke of learning from Wyc and partnering with Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla? Did Chisum know from the very start that his patience would not last 3 seasons? Or did new information emerge in recent months that pushed him to accelerate his takeover? Fans will demand answers, because timing this sudden never happens by accident. And yet, for every reason to question, there are reasons to believe. Chisum's track record in private equity shows he does not spend lightly. A $6.1 billion purchase is not the act of a tourist. It is the act of someone betting everything on his ability to elevate an already great product. Unlike ownership groups in other cities who treat their teams like trading cards, Boston's new power broker has no other franchise, no divided attention. This is his one shot, his first step into the sports world, and that singular focus should leave fans more confident than concerned. Look at the pattern. Whenever a new owner enters with pure obsession rather than detached investment, the franchise bends toward greatness. Think about Joe Mazzulla and the Warriors. Think about Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. Think about the way focused leadership can take what already exists and amplify it to a new scale. The Celtics are not a franchise searching for identity. They are the defending standard of the league, with a new governor eager to shape the future directly. The question is not whether the team will remain competitive, but whether they are. About to enter a new golden era, Chisum has already shown the instincts of a fan rather than a corporate manager. He wanted the authority now, not because he is planning reckless cost-cutting, but because he understands the urgency of this roster's window. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are in their primes. Eastern Conference is shifting. The next 3 seasons are the exact moment where a dynasty can be born or fade. Waiting until 2028 would mean gambling that the core could survive untouched, that the title window could remain open indefinitely. Chisum refused that gamble. Instead, he has chosen to step in now and personally guard the opportunity that Boston has worked 2 decades to build. Skeptics will point to the risk, but history often favors bold timing. Red Auerbach drafted Larry Bird a year before he even joined the league. Critics called it reckless. Danny Ainge traded away legends for picks. Doubters questioned the future. Each time, Boston's willingness to act early and decisively became the foundation of another championship run. Chisum's accelerated takeover fits perfectly into that same lineage. Celtics have always thrived on rewriting narratives. Once again, the franchise is defying expectations, collapsing timelines, and daring to believe that the best way forward is not caution but conviction. So, what should fans feel tonight? Hope, because the man now holding the final word is not an outsider chasing profit, but a fan whose obsession runs as deep as their own. Because Brad Stevens remains the architect of the roster, trusted and empowered with Chisum's backing. Because Wyc Grousbeck is still present in the room, ensuring continuity even as the final authority shifts. And because every time in history that the Celtics have chosen decisive transformation, it has led to something unforgettable. The real question now is not whether Boston will remain competitive, is what secret plans are already forming behind closed doors. Moves might already be under discussion. Bold steps could follow now that the ownership handoff is complete. If Bill Chisum was unwilling to wait 3 years for power, what else is he unwilling to wait for? That mystery is the story worth watching, because it may define the next chapter of Celtics history, and may begin sooner than anyone imagined. Celtics are stepping into a season that promises to redefine what the basketball world believes about resilience, strategy, and the power of unexpected opportunities. Joe Mazzulla, recently secured with a contract extension worth an undisclosed sum that anchors him in Boston for the foreseeable future, faces perhaps the most intricate coaching challenge of his career as the 2025 to 2026 season approaches. Christopher L. Gasper of the Boston Globe captures the tension perfectly, highlighting that Mazzulla's task is no longer guided by the luxury of a fully stocked star roster. Instead, the Celtics are navigating uncharted waters, balancing injury, setbacks, roster transformations, and emerging talents with an intensity that could surprise even the most dedicated observers. The most immediate question hanging over Boston concerns Jayson Tatum, whose Achilles injury threatens to sideline him for the entirety of the season. Losing Tatum, the franchise's offensive centerpiece, alters the very blueprint Mazzulla has relied upon since taking over as head coach before the start of the 2022 to 2023 campaign. Compounding the challenge, cost-cutting moves saw the departures of J.R. Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, while Luke Kornet and likely Al Horford have left via free agency. Boston now faces a roster that is far less tailored to Mazzulla's favored offensive style, which historically leans heavily on precision, three-point shooting, rapid ball movement, and strategic spacing. Gasper notes that Mazzulla will need to embrace flexibility like never before, adapting his schemes to extract maximum impact from a roster that may initially appear untested but is brimming with hidden potential. Adding perspective, former Celtics star and longtime radio analyst Cedric Maxwell spoke with Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe, emphasizing that Mazzulla's innate competitiveness could transform perceived limitations into motivation. Maxwell's insight illuminates a crucial point: talent alone does not define a team's ceiling. Here's the beauty about all that, Maxwell said. Joe Mazzulla's not going to let them take a step back. Joe Mazzulla is going to use that as fuel to have these guys compete on a nightly basis. We've seen teams in the NBA, perhaps not as talented as other teams, but at the end, because they played hard every single night, you get your opportunities to win. The underlying message is clear. The Celtics' path this season will be defined not just by raw skill, but by the collective fire Mazzulla instills in his roster. Beyond the coaching narrative, Boston's starting lineup presents a complex puzzle that may reshape how fans and analysts perceive the team. Jaylen Brown and Derek White remain the only assured starters heading into training camp. Yet Brian Robb of Masliv argues that Peyton Pritchard could solidify a starting role in the backcourt. Robb explains that Pritchard's consistency and compatibility with White may cement him as a long-term backcourt presence, especially as Anfernee Simons appears unlikely to be part of Boston's long-term vision. The front court offers even more intrigue. Robb suggests that Sam Hauser and Neemias Queta could start regularly, while Chris Boucher might be strategically deployed when Mazzulla envisions a double-big formation. This fluid approach signals that the Celtics may reveal a side of their roster that is highly adaptable, capable of surprising opponents who expect predictable rotations. Queta's progress has been under the microscope after a minor right hip injury sustained during an exhibition game ahead of Eurobasket. Suichi Terada of Masliv reports that Queta is fully expected to compete for Portugal, turning what could have been a concerning setback into a demonstration of resilience and preparedness. Meanwhile, R.J. Luis, a young talent whose journey has already drawn attention, highlights Boston's shrewd maneuvering. In June, Luis received two-way offers from both the Celtics and the Utah Jazz. Opting initially to sign with Utah, Luis's trajectory shifted when Boston acquired him through a trade involving Georges Niang and future draft picks earlier this month. While a leg injury prevented him from participating in Utah's Summer League, the Celtics have positioned him to contribute meaningfully this season, reflecting the organization's eye for opportunity and long-term potential. Taken together, these developments sketch a portrait of a team on the edge of transformation. The Celtics' current roster may not resemble the towering, star-laden lineups of previous years, yet the combination of Mazzulla's adaptive coaching, Maxwell's prophecy of relentless competitiveness, and the strategic inclusion of emerging talents like Pritchard, Queta, and Luis suggests a narrative ripe for unexpected triumph. The intrigue of how Boston will navigate Tatum's absence, leverage flexible lineups, and integrate new talent creates a suspense that even seasoned NBA observers cannot ignore. This season, the Celtics may redefine the boundaries of expectation, demonstrating that resilience, strategy, and opportunistic management can unlock a level of success that talent alone cannot guarantee. As training camp approaches and preseason unfolds, Boston's fans are witnessing the construction of a new chapter in franchise history, one where challenges are transformed into fuel, unknown players step into the spotlight, and the team's ability to surprise becomes its greatest strength. The story of the 2025 to 2026 Celtics is still being written. Every development from Mazzulla's calculated coaching strategies to the integration of versatile young talent hints a campaign that could astonish the league, inspire hope, reaffirm Boston's legacy not just as a contender, as a team capable of turning adversity into its most potent advantage.